Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, good morning. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We are here to announce that the city is filing suit and asking the federal court here in Philadelphia to stop Attorney General Sessions from adding unlawful conditions to the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, better known as the JAG program. As you know, this city welcomes immigrants here in Philadelphia. For many years, long before I was mayor, I've stressed that immigrants are key to the success of Philadelphia. All immigrants. Immigrants have played a significant role in Philadelphia's population growth in recent years, helping to reverse 50 years of population loss. In some Philadelphia neighborhoods, the influx of immigrants has prevented destabilizing blight, improved public schools, and helped spur growth in neighborhood commercial corridors. From 2000 to 2013, immigrants were responsible for 96% of the Main Street neighborhood business growth. 96, that's an A+. The Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce has reported that since 2000, immigrants are responsible for 75% of Philadelphia's workforce growth. The Trump administration disagrees strongly with some of the welcoming policies that have allowed us this growth. He would prefer that our police and prison officials work as an extension of ICE, and that's not a good thing. In Philadelphia, our officers don't ask immigration status, and we have adopted other welcoming policies because research has shown, and most law enforcement leaders, like the major cities' chiefs of police association, believe that trust between officers and immigrant communities is essential to reducing crime and helping crime victims. Let me read it again. They believe that trust between officers and immigrant communities is essential to reducing crime and helping crime victims. Philadelphia's policies do not violate any federal laws. Philadelphia works with our federal partners on anti-terrorism and drug trafficking task forces. And we also do not stop ICE from doing its job. So I'd hoped a lawsuit might not be necessary. But I've been advised by the city solicitor that the Justice Department has clearly overstepped its bounds regarding the JAG program, and that recourse to the courts to stop these unlawful methods is now in the city's best interest. I trust that the legal system will make a fair determination about what the Justice Department can and cannot do to coerce us in this way. And I'd like to turn this over now to our city solicitor, Sozi Tulante, to discuss the suit and in greater detail, and then we will take questions after his remarks. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the privilege of being part of the team representing the city in this matter. As the Mayor just mentioned this morning, the city sued the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, in federal court here in Philadelphia. It is not an action that we take lightly, but is also an action that is absolutely necessary. The lawsuit is about the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, which is a funding program Congress established to help local law enforcement fight crime. We are asking a federal judge to prevent the Attorney General from trying to unlawfully impose 3 unprecedented conditions, all of which focus on the city's relationship with our immigrant community to the JAG funds. The Attorney General is requiring that to receive JAG funding for FY 2017, the city must, 1, certify compliance with a federal statute, Section 1373 of Title 8 of the U.S. Code, 2, provide ICE with 48 hours notice of the scheduled release of prisoners of interest, and 3, allow ICE unfettered access to interview inmates in Philadelphia's prison system. We don't think he can add these conditions to the grant funding, and we're going to court to stop him from doing so. I will talk about these conditions more later. For now, let me emphasize what the mayor says, which is that Philadelphia practices community policing. Like most major cities, we've determined that public safety is best promoted without Philadelphia's active involvement in enforcement of federal immigration law. Forcing our police and prison officials to become immigrant enforcement agents harms the city, entangles us in the federal immigration system, and further creates fear and anxiety among members of our immigrant community. Let me talk about how we got here. The need for this lawsuit has been building for some time. As you recall, after the president took office, he issued an executive order commanding federal agencies to withhold funding from so-called sanctuary cities. Although a federal court enjoined much of the order, the DOJ continued to target some cities through JAG funding. JAG funding has been an important source for criminal justice programming in the city, including the police department, the DA's office, and our court system. And since that grant was created in 2005, We've successfully applied for these grants each year under both Democratic and Republican administrations without any issue. That obviously has recently changed. This administration has singled out Philadelphia, along with 8 other jurisdictions, by requiring for FY 2016, we certify compliance with Section 1373. And that is a law which addresses the sharing of citizenship or immigration status information with ICE. I certified our compliance for FY 2016 on June 22nd, 2016. And although the Attorney General has made threatening statements about that, he hasn't actually issued a decision about the certification. But on July 25th, 2017, the Attorney General issued a press release stating that it is now imposing 2 new immigration-related conditions on applicants for FY 2017 JAG funding, along with the certification for Section 1373. As it has every year since the program began, Congress has required DOJ to distribute JAG funding to state and local governments for this year. To get our share, we have to apply by September 5th, 2017. I want to talk about the 3 conditions because each of them are not supported by law. First, the Justice Department cannot properly connect Section 1373 to JAG grants. Section 1373 is not relevant to the criminal justice grant funding we receive or to our law enforcement activity. Criminal justice grants support efforts to enforce criminal laws. The grants have nothing to do with the enforcement of the largely civil immigration laws, which the Constitution makes a federal function. The Attorney General overstepped his bounds in not even requiring us and other jurisdictions to make such a certification, and the requirement violates the Constitution. Our lawsuit explains that in detail. But we actually do comply with Section 1373. Our policies explicitly allow our police to cooperate with federal authorities and to share with them identifying information about criminal suspects in the city, including immigration status information to the extent it comes into our possession. With respect to vulnerable people like victims and witnesses and those who want access to city services and protections, we want our immigrant residents, like all of our residents, to feel safe that they will access these services and communicate with law enforcement without fear of jeopardy to their immigrant status or that of their loved ones. It is widely accepted, and I think this is incontrovertible throughout the country, that trust between law enforcement and immigrant communities helps to prevent and fight crime. That is what we're seeking to protect in this lawsuit. And unlike the policy of Section 1373, which at least is an actual federal law, the 2 other conditions, that is for notifying ICE and giving ICE access to our prisons, have absolutely no basis in federal law. There's no federal statute that authorizes the Attorney General to impose these conditions to the JAG grant. Congress, not the Justice Department, decides on the conditions of legislative allocation of federal dollars. Even when the executive branch is authorized to develop conditions for grants, there are rules it must follow when it does so. The Justice Department has failed to follow any such rule in the JAG announcements. And of course, we actually have good reasons for the policies that we have with respect to these 2 policies. The first one is the federal government wants us to provide ICE with a 48-hour notice of scheduled release of prisoners who ICE is interested in. This attempt to make our prison officials part of the federal immigration law enforcement efforts would disrupt relations with immigrant communities without having any real significance on immigration enforcement. The vast majority of people detained in our prison system are either awaiting trial and therefore have not been convicted of anything, or are awaiting sentencing. If they are released from our custody into the community, it is either because they made bail or otherwise a court has ordered them to be released. In those circumstances, the city has no advance notice. We have no authority to hold them, and the individual is entitled to be released. So it is not possible to give the 48 hours notice that ICE is asking for. A relatively small portion of prisoners released from city custody serve sentences in our local prison system. Those individuals who have been convicted of far less significant offenses than those who serve time in the state prison system, and therefore are serving shorter term sentences in Philadelphia. These generally are not the individuals for whom ICE has sent notification requests in the past. Even if ICE does ask for notification of these individuals, it would be disruptive to the trust developed with the immigrant community, and therefore harmful to our local law enforcement efforts generally, to actively help ICE with immigration enforcement on a routine basis, particularly with respect to individuals who have had relatively low level involvement in our criminal justice system. And remember, we are under no legal obligation to do so. And finally, the federal government also wants to have access to interview prisoners in our prison system, apparently in order to investigate the immigration status of those individuals or their families. Let me be very clear, ICE has such access. Like the policy in many major cities, our policy is to ask such individuals who ICE has sought to question if they're willing to speak with ICE and to notify them of their rights, which include the legal right not to speak with ICE and to have a lawyer present if they decide to do so. These are entirely reasonable conditions placed on ICE's access to those in our custody. So in summary, the Trump administrations, of course, they're entitled to disagree with how we manage things in the city of Philadelphia. What they cannot do, however, is to make up rules beyond the directives of Congress in order to coerce us to change how we handle things locally. That is why we filed this lawsuit. Lastly, you can imagine an effort like this takes a village, and the scary thought, it's a village of lawyers. So I want to recognize the lawyers who are here with us today representing the city in this litigation. The city has been very fortunate to have skilled and diligent attorneys from Hogan Lovells working around the clock in this matter. They've spent hours crafting the complaint, ensuring that we're on the right track. I want to thank them, specifically lead counsel Jenny Gibson, along with Sarah Solo, Jasmine Ahuja, and Alex Borman, who are all here with us today. In addition, we are also honored to have the team from the Deckard firm working with us. Although they focused much of their effort on some other issues of concern to the city, they provided great support in this matter too. And I want to specifically thank Judy Leon, Will Saxey, Rachel Rosenberg, who are with us today, and Bob Heim, who couldn't be here. They are Philadelphians who care about the city and this issue and are working largely free because of how important this is to our city. Now I'm prepared to take any questions. Pat? The lawsuit was filed this morning in federal court here. Yeah, it's out there in front.
Have you seen already a backlash to, between the immigrant communities and law enforcement? Is that something we're already dealing with?
Yeah, we're hearing that anecdotally, and I think it's sort of intuitive. If there is a sense from the immigrant community that interacting with law enforcement now puts you into the path of the federal immigration authorities, the natural inclination is to step back. And ultimately, we really want people to come forward because our local police officers are trying to keep us safe and solve crimes here. And in order for them to do that, they really need the trust and cooperation from members of the immigrant community, along with other Philadelphians. Bobby? I don't think it's going to go away because I think we have a good lawsuit. But if it were, I mean, just historically, we've used JAG running grants to support the police, things like police overtime, equipment, and so forth. A portion of that also goes to the DA's office, and they put in a request, and they've used it as well. And the municipal court system is able to use some of the resources that that JAG provides for. So, I mean, I think that the impact, and that's what we've made clear in the lawsuit, that we use this funding for all aspects of the criminal justice system. It has nothing to do with the immigration system. Our prisons don't get JAG funding, and Julie will tell me if I'm wrong, but this is not, and remember, a lot of these policies are focused on the prison. Our prisons aren't getting that. So, it's something that we tremendously care about, and we want to get this funding, and we're applying on September 5th. Yes, ma'am. This will be the fifth jurisdiction to file a lawsuit. Chicago has filed suit. The state of California has filed a lawsuit. San Francisco is as well, and LA. LA is trying to join that litigation. So there are other lawsuits that have been filed on some combination of these conditions, but for the FY 2017 JAG funding. And other jurisdictions have written to the Department of Justice seeking some clarification regarding some of these very conditions. What do you mean? No, we haven't contacted them about this, but we think that we have pretty good claims, and so that's something that we may. The mayor gets off scot-free. This is great. And he's sitting with all these lawyers, so this is really.
My sanctuary.
Thank you very much.